The convent of St. Gabriel was a sanctuary, perched on the hills overlooking the sleepy town of Erisfield. Its stone walls, aged but resilient, seemed to hold centuries of whispered prayers, quiet meditations, and unspoken struggles. Within these walls, Sister Alethea lived a life of devotion. Alethea had been at the convent for nearly a decade, joining at a young age after a profound spiritual awakening that had led her to renounce the world she once knew. Her life was a cycle of quiet duties, tending to the garden, helping at the orphanage, and leading prayer sessions. Her days were calm, her nights peaceful, or so it appeared. Lately, Alethea had felt an unshakable emptiness. It was a sensation she couldn't quite name, a gnawing ache that prayer and fasting seemed unable to soothe. She had always been the picture of serenity, a beacon of calm for the other sisters, but within her heart a storm was brewing. It was on a particularly brisk evening that her routine was interrupted. Mother Ivana, the abbess, had asked her to attend a charity gala in the town on behalf of the convent. "They are raising funds for the orphanage," Mother Ivana had explained. "You have a way with people, Alethea. They listen to you. Perhaps your presence might inspire generosity." At first, Alethea hesitated. The idea of stepping beyond the convent walls felt both exhilarating and unnerving, but she knew better than to refuse Mother Ivana. So, she donned her modest black cloak, clasped her rosary tightly in her hand, and ventured into the bustling world of Erisfield's evening streets. The gala was held at the town hall, a grand building that seemed alive with music and laughter that spilled into the cold night air. Inside, the atmosphere was vibrant and warm. Candles cast a golden glow over the room, illuminating faces full of life. Alethea moved quietly among the crowd, her presence drawing curious glances. Many of the townsfolk knew of her, though few had ever spoken to her. To them, she was a symbol of purity and devotion, a figure cloaked in mystery. But tonight, she was just another guest, navigating the conversations and pleasantries with a polite smile. A man approached her, a traveler named Darian, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that sparkled with mischief. "Sister," he greeted her with a slight bow, "I must say, your presence here is unexpected but refreshing. How does one like you find herself in a place like this?" Alethea offered a reserved smile. "I'm here on behalf of the orphanage," she said. "The convent supports their work, and I was sent to represent us." Darian chuckled. "Ah, a noble cause. But tell me, sister, do you ever tire of such duty? Surely, even the most faithful among us must yearn for something more." His words struck a chord she wasn't prepared for. She deflected his question with practiced humility, but something about his gaze lingered in her mind. As the evening went on, Alethea found herself drawn into conversations she wouldn't normally entertain. People shared stories of adventure, lost love, and joy, emotions that felt distant from her cloistered life. At one point, a young poet recited verses that spoke of freedom and the wildness of the human spirit. The words stirred something deep within her, and for the first time in years, Alethea felt alive in a way she couldn't describe. When the music began, she stood to leave, but Darian appeared again. "One dance, sister," he said, his hand extended. Alethea hesitated, her mind racing with protests, but her heart whispered otherwise. Against her better judgment, she placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her onto the dance floor. The music was gentle, the steps simple, but the act itself felt almost forbidden. The night unfolded unpredictably. Alethea found herself mingling with people she would never meet otherwise. There was the baker who spoke passionately about his craft, a widow who recounted tales of her late husband's kindness, and a merchant who shared vivid stories of lands she could only dream of. Each interaction felt like a doorway into another world, a fleeting glimpse of a life far removed from her own. It wasn't about romance or desire. It was about connection, about feeling seen and understood in ways she hadn't realized she needed. By the time the event ended, Alethea was overwhelmed. The weight of her choices settled on her as she walked back to the convent under the pale moonlight. She replayed the evening in her mind. The laughter, the stories, the moments of intimacy. None of it had felt premeditated, yet all of it felt profoundly significant. As she crossed the threshold into the quiet convent, the familiar stillness greeted her, but instead of comfort, it brought unease. Alethea slipped into her small cell and knelt to pray, but the words felt hollow. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Was she truly unworthy? Had she betrayed her vows, or had she simply confronted a part of herself she long suppressed? By dawn, she knew she couldn't carry the burden alone. She would go to Father Maverick, the church's confessor, and lay bare her soul. Whatever penance awaited her, she would accept it, for she could not continue with this guilt gnawing at her. The morning sun cast long shadows as Alethea walked to St. Gabriel's Church. The town was quiet, the streets empty save for a few early risers. She entered the church, her steps tentative but determined. Father Maverick was lighting candles near the altar when she arrived. He turned to greet her, his kind eyes softening as he noticed her troubled expression. "Sister Alethea," he said gently, "what brings you here so early?" "I need to confess, Father," she replied, her voice trembling. "I have strayed." Father Maverick nodded solemnly, leading her to the confessional. As she settled into the small, enclosed space, the weight of her sins pressed down on her. Through the screen, she began to speak, her words trembling but unflinchingly honest. "I attended the gala last night," she began. "At first, it was just to represent the convent, but I allowed myself to indulge in things I should not have. I spoke with strangers, shared laughter and stories, even danced with a man. And though it was not in malice or lust, I feel I have betrayed my vows." Father Maverick listened in silence, his steady presence a balm to her frayed nerves. When she finished, he spoke with measured wisdom. "Sister Alethea, sin often arises not from malice, but from misunderstanding of oneself, one's needs, and one's limits. Tell me, what did you seek in those moments?" She hesitated, then confessed, "I don't know. Perhaps I sought connection or freedom, or to feel something real. My life has been devoted to service, but lately I feel as though I am losing myself in it." Father Maverick considered her words carefully. "You are not the first to feel this way, nor will you be the last. Faith does not demand perfection. It demands honesty and growth. Your actions may have strayed, but they also reveal the truth you must confront. Use this as an opportunity to reflect. Seek not only forgiveness, but understanding." Alethea nodded, tears streaming down her face. "What should I do, Father?" "Pray, but not only in solitude," he advised. "Speak to those you serve. Listen to their struggles, and through them, find a connection that fulfills your spirit without breaking your vows. Redemption lies not in punishment, but in purpose." Sister Alethea left the church with Father Maverick's words echoing in her heart. She understood now that her struggle wasn't about the events of that one night. It was about the yearning within her, the need for connection and meaning that her current life had not fully satisfied. Determined to make amends and rediscover her path, Alethea began her journey of penance and understanding. It wasn't a penance of isolation or self-punishment, as she had initially feared, but one of engagement. Father Maverick's advice had been clear: to find a way to reconcile her human desires for connection with her spiritual devotion. A new beginning at the orphanage. The first place she turned was the orphanage. Alethea had always been a familiar figure there, but her interactions had often been routine. She would bring food, read to the children, and offer prayer. Now, she sought to truly understand the lives of those she served. She began spending her mornings with the children, listening to their stories, their fears, and their dreams. There was Aaron, a boy of 10 who wanted to be a blacksmith like his late father, and young Marin, who dreamed of traveling to lands beyond the mountains. Alethea shared their laughter and their tears, finding in them the connection she had sought. In the afternoons, she worked alongside the orphanage staff, taking on tasks she had previously avoided. She helped fix broken furniture, prepared meals, and even tended to the sick. Through this, she discovered a new sense of purpose. The children's resilience and the staff's unwavering dedication inspired her to rekindle her own faith. A confrontation with the past. Weeks passed, and the weight of guilt that had burdened Alethea began to lift. However, one unresolved aspect of that fateful night lingered in her mind. Darian, the traveler who had been the first to question her life's direction. One day, as she walked through the market collecting donations for the orphanage, she saw him again. He was surrounded by a small crowd, regaling them with tales of his travels. Her instinct was to turn away, but something within her urged her to approach. "Darian," she called softly. He turned, his expression shifting from surprise to warmth. "Sister Alethea," he said, stepping closer. "I didn't expect to see you again." "I didn't expect to see you either," she admitted. "But I'm glad for the chance. I wanted to thank you." He raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled. "Thank me? For what?" "For forcing me to confront truths about myself," she said. "That night, I felt lost and confused. But now I understand that I wasn't betraying my faith. I was searching for it. Your questions helped me realize what I was missing." Darian smiled, a touch of sadness in his eyes. "I only meant to have a conversation, sister. If I've helped you find peace, then I'm glad." Alethea nodded, feeling a sense of closure she hadn't expected. They parted ways, and as she watched him disappear into the crowd, she realized that their encounter had been a catalyst for her transformation, finding her purpose. Months passed, and Alethea's life took on a new rhythm. She continued her work at the orphanage, but her role within the convent also evolved. She began leading workshops on emotional and spiritual connection, drawing from her own experiences to guide others who felt adrift. Her honesty about her struggles resonated with the other sisters, many of whom confessed to similar feelings of isolation or doubt. Together, they created a space where vulnerability was not seen as weakness, but as an opportunity for growth. Alethea also strengthened her bond with the townsfolk. She organized events where the convent and the community could come together. Dinners, storytelling nights, and charity drives. These gatherings bridged the gap between the sacred and the secular, reminding everyone that faith was not confined to the walls of a church. The final confession. One quiet evening, Alethea returned to the confessional where her journey had begun. She knelt before the screen, her heart steady. "Father Malric," she said, her voice calm but resolute, "I have come to confess, though not as I did before." "Speak, my child," he replied. "I wish to confess my gratitude," she said, "for the guidance you gave me, for the forgiveness I found within myself, and for the strength to transform my life. That night of doubt was the beginning of something beautiful. I understand now that faith is not about perfection, but about embracing our imperfections and finding meaning through them." Father Malric's voice carried a note of pride as he responded, "Alethea, your journey has been one of courage and grace. You have turned your struggles into a source of light for others. Remember, faith is not a destination. It is a path we walk, always striving, always learning." As Alethea rose and left the church, the evening sun bathed the town in a golden glow. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that her life was now a testament to the power of redemption and connection. In the days that followed, she continued to live her faith not as a rigid set of rules, but as a dynamic force that embraced humanity in all its complexity. Alethea had found her place in the world, not above it, not apart from it, but within it, guided by love, compassion, and the unshakable belief that even in our darkest moments, there is light to be found.